You have felt it for years. Haven't you, that quiet undercurrent, like a subterranean river moving beneath the thin crust of daily life? It has been the constant background hum of your existence. The invisible labor of feeling for others, reading the unspoken, carrying the weight of wounds that were never yours to begin with. As an empath, and more specifically one whose mind moves along the rare contours of the INTJ or INFJ temperament, you have been trained by life not merely to sense, but to foresee. You have learned to anticipate not just people's words, but their silences. To see the consequence before the act. To watch a decision forming in the shadows of another's hesitation, and yet there comes a moment, sometimes sudden, sometimes so gradual, you do not see it until the moment is upon you, when the well inside dries. Not because you have grown cold, but because something deep in the architecture of your psyche has shifted. It is not apathy, it is not bitterness. It is a soul reclaiming its borders when an empath of this rare design stops caring in the old way. The shift is tectonic. It is not the collapse of feeling, but the reorientation of it. It is the recognition that your compassion, unchecked, was never neutral. It was an exchange, and you were paying in a currency you could no longer afford to lose. I have observed in countless dreams, in the confessions of patients, and in the delicate tapestry of my own inner work, that caring for others without discernment is the most socially praised form of self-betrayal. It carries the perfume of virtue, yet often it is merely the shadow in disguise. You believe you are giving because you are strong. In truth, you give because somewhere in your unconscious is the fear that if you stop, you will vanish, that if you are not indispensable, you will be forgotten. But the unconscious is not a stagnant lake. It is a vast ocean of currents. And when one current, the current of boundless giving, has been overused, another rises in its place. The archetype shifts. The handmaid becomes the sovereign. The healer becomes the gatekeeper. And you will feel this as a withdrawal of energy from certain people, certain causes, certain conversations that once held you hostage. You must understand, this withdrawal is not cruelty. It is not a crime against love. It is the soul's demand for reciprocity. A person who has lived in the archetype of the healer for too long forgets that every healer is also a guardian of the temple. The gate cannot be left open to every passerby. You are not here to be the road everyone travels on. You are here to be the threshold that must be crossed with intention. When the INFJ or INTJ empath begins to move into this new psychic configuration, the outer world often misinterprets it. People will accuse you of being distant, detached, or even arrogant. They will say you have changed, and they will be right, but they will speak it as an accusation, when in fact it is your initiation. This is where the mystical dimension enters. For the shift from over-caring to sovereign caring is not merely a personality adjustment, it is an alchemical stage. It is the nigredo, the blackening, when the old identity dies so that the soul may be reconstituted. The fire that once kept everyone else warm is drawn back into the crucible. You become a furnace for your own transformation. In dreams, this stage often appears as a locked room in a familiar house, a room you have never entered before. It may appear as a bridge that suddenly retracts, leaving you on one side while others call to you from the other bank. In the symbolic language of the unconscious, these are not signs of loss, they are signs of individuation. You are being separated, distinguished from the collective currents that have long diluted your essence. And here lies the paradox that frightens so many empaths. When you stop caring in the old, compulsive way, you will love more truly than you ever have. For now your love will not be polluted by the shadow's hunger to be needed. You will see people without the veil of your own need for them to be well. You will no longer invest in their potential as a way of avoiding your own neglected destiny. It is a sacred withdrawal, yes, but it is also an emergence. You will notice that your intuition sharpens, as though a fog has lifted from the mirror of your mind. You will recognize manipulation with a single glance, where before you gave the benefit of the doubt until you were bleeding. You will sense which invitations are genuine and which are traps, and in this heightened clarity, your care will become rarer, but infinitely more potent. There is a danger here, of course, for when the empath turned sovereign first discovers this clarity, there is a temptation to wield it like a sword, cutting ties with a zeal that can itself become another shadow. You must remember, this stage is not about revenge against the world for using you. It is about re-establishing the sacred contract between your inner self and the outer life you choose to live. Some will be repelled by the new you. Others will be magnetized, sensing in you a depth and stability they cannot find elsewhere. But you must learn to withstand both the rejection and the fascination without bending back into the old pattern. The mythic figure of the hermit comes to mind here. In the tarot, the hermit is often depicted as an old man with a lantern, walking alone in the mountains. But what most fail to notice is that the lantern does not light the path far ahead. It only illuminates the next few steps. This is the way of the empath who has stopped caring in the old way. You do not see the entire journey, nor do you need to. You move according to the inner light, and that light is enough. If you listen closely to your own silence, you will hear something astonishing. Beneath the absence of compulsive care, there is a new presence. It is the presence of your own soul, no longer drowned out by the cries of those you once rushed to save. And this is where the real work begins, not the work of saving others, but of meeting yourself without the armor of usefulness. When the soul turns inward after a lifetime of facing outward, the first sensation is often disorientation. You are so accustomed to orienting yourself by the needs and moods of others that when those signals are removed, you do not immediately know where your own center lies. It is like standing on a dock after years at sea. The land feels still, but your body sways with phantom waves, and this is why the withdrawal of care is not an act of sudden liberation alone. It is also a confrontation with the unknown within. You will meet parts of yourself you have not touched since childhood, when your empathy was not yet a shield, but a simple openness to life. You will remember moments before you learned that care could be a currency to buy safety, acceptance, or love. And in those memories, you may feel grief, even anger, for how far you drifted from that innocence. The INFJ and INTJ temperament adds another layer to this. You are not merely intuitive feelers or thinkers. You are strategists of the unseen. Your empathy is not raw emotion spilling over. It is precise, pattern-seeking, able to map the inner architecture of a person as though you were tracing the blueprints of their soul. This ability, when turned inward, becomes both a gift and a trial. You will see your own contradictions with startling clarity. You will watch the shadow moving in the corridors of your own mind. You will witness the ways in which you used helping to avoid your own transformation. Stopping the old form of caring strips you of this avoidance. It forces you into the alchemical chamber of self-confrontation. This is why so many resist it, not because they fear losing others, but because they fear meeting themselves without the mask of service in the language of dreams. This confrontation often takes the form of mirrors. The mirror may be cracked or fogged or hidden behind a curtain. In some dreams, the mirror reflects not your face but that of a stranger. This is the unconscious telling you that you are about to encounter a version of yourself you do not yet recognize, and this encounter will change the way you move through the world forever. Do not mistake this stage for isolation. It is solitude, which is very different. Isolation is a closing of the heart out of fear. Solitude is an opening to the self out of necessity. The hermit archetype does not retreat because he hates the village. He retreats because he must carry back to the village something that can only be found in the mountains. When you stop caring in the compulsive way, your interactions become fewer but more charged with meaning. The people who remain in your orbit feel your presence more deeply because it is no longer diluted by the background noise of 100 other obligations. Your energy, once scattered, now moves with the focus of a river narrowing into a canyon, and with that focus comes power, not the power to dominate, but the power to be unmoved by manipulation, to stand in your own knowing, even when the crowd insists you are wrong. This is where the mystic's path begins to merge with the strategists. The INTJ and INFJ empath, freed from the burden of overcaring, can see the landscape of human relationships like a chessboard, not in the cold, calculating sense, but with the clarity of one who understands the archetypes at play. You see the wounded child hiding behind aggression. You see the tyrant covering his terror with control. You see the lover whose devotion is a mask for dependency, and instead of rushing to fix, you simply witness. Witnessing without intervening is a discipline. It is the opposite of the savior reflex. It is saying to the other, I see you, I understand the myth you are living, and I will not interfere in your rite of passage. For it is not mine to walk. This is not abandonment. It is respect for the sovereignty of another soul's journey. The outer world will test you here. It will send you people who sense your light, but want it on their terms. It will offer you causes that seem righteous but drain your essence. It will tempt you with opportunities to prove that you still care, as though care must be proven at all. And each time you will feel the pull of the old pattern like a phantom limb, but you will also feel something else, the quiet anchor of your own center, holding you steady. If you have reached this point, you will also begin to notice the dreams shift. The locked room you saw earlier may open now. The mirror may clear. And for the first time, you recognize your own face, not the face you have shown the world, but the face you wear in the deep corridors of the soul. This recognition is not always comfortable. Sometimes it reveals pride, sometimes fear, sometimes longing you thought you had buried, but it also reveals your uncorrupted essence. The part of you that existed before the world taught you to trade care for belonging. This is the gold hidden in the darkness. When you stop caring in the old way, you recover the gold of your own life force. And with it, you recover choice. Choice in where you give, when you give, and to whom. Choice in whether you step into another story or remain the author of your own. The mystics speak of a point in the journey where you must pass through the desert alone. The desert is barren, not because life has abandoned you, but because the old life can no longer sustain you. In the desert, the false waters of external validation dry up. Only the inner spring remains, and you will discover that it is enough. It is here that the transformation begins to ripple outward. Those who once relied on your overcaring may falter, even resent you, but those who are meant to walk beside you in this next stage will meet you in the desert, carrying their own springs. Together, you will create an oasis, not for the needy, but for the willing. When you stand in that desert long enough, something subtle but undeniable begins to occur. The air itself changes around you. People feel it before they understand it, the quiet confidence, the untouchable stillness, the way your gaze no longer seeks permission or bends to approval. This is the aura of someone who has reclaimed their psychic energy from the collective and woven it back into the fabric of their own being. For the INTJ or INFJ empath, this stage is especially profound because you are no longer scattering your vision into the endless dramas of others. Your intuition, once clouded by the static of constant emotional labor, becomes like a sharpened blade. You begin to see not only what is happening, but what will happen if certain threads are pulled. You no longer feel the compulsion to intervene because you have come to understand that interference often robs a soul of the very trial that would make them whole. Here, your life begins to operate under the law of psychic economy. You spend energy as a king spends gold, not from fear of poverty, but from the understanding that true wealth must circulate with intention, not leak from unattended coffers. Every choice of attention becomes sacred. Every no becomes an invocation of the self. And every yes carries the weight of destiny. The world will notice. Some will be drawn to your clarity as moss to a flame, and others will be repelled, sensing they cannot extract from you what they once could. Those who fed on your boundless empathy will call you selfish, cold, even cruel. And here is where your new discipline must hold. For this is the shadow's final snare, the attempt to shame you back into the old role. But something in you has already crossed the threshold. You cannot go back without betraying the sovereign who has emerged. The archetype of the healer still lives within you, but it now walks beside the warrior, the sage, the sovereign. This is the integration the mystics speak of, not the destruction of what you were, but the transfiguration of it. Dreams in this stage often bring the image of keys. Sometimes you are holding them, sometimes you are offered them, and sometimes you find them in the most unexpected places buried in soil, inside a locked box, even in the mouth of an animal. The key is the symbol of access, of rightful entry, in the language of the unconscious. It means you are being given passage into a new chamber of your own psyche, one that was previously sealed off by your over-identification with others. In waking life, this key takes the form of discernment. You begin to know not only who to let into your life, but also how far they are allowed to enter. Not every visitor must cross the inner sanctum. Some are meant to be met at the threshold. This understanding changes the architecture of your relationships. You may find that some bonds dissolve quietly, without bitterness. Others will deepen in ways you could not have imagined, because they now exist on the foundation of mutual respect rather than silent obligation. You will also begin to notice a strange and beautiful inversion as you stop caring for the sake of being needed. Those who are truly aligned with you will begin to care for you. The reciprocity that once seemed a distant fantasy will start to appear in your life, not as a transaction, but as a natural law. It is as though by closing the leaks in your energy, you have altered the entire ecosystem of your existence. From the perspective of analytical psychology, this is the individuation process in motion. You are no longer merely a persona designed to please and protect others. You are becoming a whole being, integrated with both light and shadow. You are learning to hold your empathy in one hand and your boundaries in the other, without letting either slip away. And here, the mystical dimension deepens. The more you align with your own center, the more you begin to sense that you are being guided not by the demands of the external world, but by an inner compass that feels ancient, unshakable. This compass is the self, the central archetype that holds the totality of who you are and who you are becoming. It whispers to you in dreams, nudges you through synchronicities, and shapes your path in ways the rational mind cannot predict. You may begin to experience moments of profound stillness where time seems to slow and your awareness expands beyond the personal. In these moments, you are not just the empath or the strategist. You are the witness to the vast unfolding of life itself. And from this vantage point, caring takes on a different meaning. It is no longer about fixing or rescuing. It is about holding the space for life to reveal itself in its own time. This is why when INTJ and INFJ empaths stop caring in the old way, the world reacts so strongly. On some unconscious level, people sense that you have stepped outside the collective trance. You no longer play by the unspoken agreements that govern emotional exchange in the herd. You are not hostile to the herd, but you are no longer bound to it. This autonomy is magnetic to some, threatening to others. And yet, there is a subtle danger here as well. The danger of detachment becoming indifference. True sovereignty does not numb itself to the suffering of the world. It simply refuses to be consumed by it. You will have to monitor this edge carefully, for the temptation to retreat entirely can be strong, especially when you see how much chaos still swirls in the lives of others. But remember, You did not withdraw to escape life. You withdrew to live it more truthfully. In this space, you become what I would call a silent influence. You do not impose your presence. Yet, it shifts the atmosphere. You may speak less, but when you do, your words land with the force of truth. You may act less, but your actions ripple further. This is the paradox of psychic withdrawal. By doing less, you often accomplish more. And as this paradox takes root in your life, you begin to see that what you have reclaimed is not just energy, it is your myth. The story you live by is no longer written by the needs and projections of others. It is authored from the deep center of your being, a center that has been waiting for you to come home. There comes a morning, and you will recognize it the moment it arrives, when you awaken and the air feels different. You are not waiting for anything, not for permission, not for someone's approval, not for the return of a call, a message, or a validation that once meant everything. You simply are, and that being is enough. This is not complacency. It is not the passivity of resignation. It is the equilibrium of one who has stopped bargaining with life. The INTJ or INFJ empath who has reached this point does not move through the world with the urgent gait of someone trying to keep everything from collapsing. You are no longer the silent scaffolding holding up structures that were never yours to build. Instead, you walk as one who knows that every step either honors or betrays the soul, and you will not betray it again. From the outside, some will see this as distance, even aloofness, but those who look deeper will sense the warmth that still resides within you. Only now it burns with a steady flame instead of flaring wildly at every gust of need. You have not lost your empathy, you have refined it. It has passed through the fire of discernment and emerged as something rarer, a care that is chosen, not compelled. Here, the archetypes shift again. The healer remains, but stands shoulder to shoulder with the ruler. The magician, the sage. You are no longer a single figure in your psychic court. You are the entire council. Unified in purpose, the shadow still lives among them, but now it is integrated a counselor rather than a saboteur. You no longer waste energy suppressing its voice, for you understand that it speaks the truth. The rest of you may resist in dreams. This stage may appear as a homecoming. You walk into a house that is both strange and deeply familiar. Every room is lit. Every door stands open. The mirrors reflect your true form without distortion. This is the psyche's way of showing that the compartments have been dissolved. The split selves reunited. You have become whole enough to inhabit yourself fully, and from this wholeness, something extraordinary begins to happen. The external world rearranges itself to meet you. Relationships that once drained you fade into the distance, not with conflict, but with the quiet inevitability of a tide going out. New connections form around shared essence rather than shared wounds. Work that once felt like a slow depletion begins to align with your deeper calling. Even your perception of time changes. You no longer feel hurried, even when you are moving quickly, because you are no longer racing against the fear of being left behind. This is not a static endpoint. It is a living alignment. You will still be tested. Moments will arise that tempt you to slip back into the reflex of overcaring, to pour yourself out for someone who has no vessel to hold what you give. But now there's a pause before the act, a moment of inner consultation with your own counsel, and in that pause, you will know whether the act is love or compulsion. The mystical dimension here is unavoidable. You begin to see life itself as an unfolding dream, rich with symbols and archetypes playing their parts. You recognize the wounded child not only in others, but in the movements of nations, in the rhythms of history. You see the tyrant archetype not only in the controlling partner or employer, but in the patterns of culture and thought that try to claim dominion over the soul. And you realize that your withdrawal from overcaring was not just a personal act, it was a refusal to feed those collective shadows. This awareness alters your presence in ways words cannot fully describe. You are no longer simply a participant in the social play, you are also its observer, and at times, inquiet directeur, you're influenced by the gravity of your being rather than by the force of your doing. People sense it in ways they cannot articulate, in the way they hesitate before speaking to you, in the way they measure their words, in the way they feel strangely seen and slightly unsettled in your presence. It is here that the deepest paradox reveals itself. By caring less in the old, boundless way, you actually hold a greater space for life to move. You are no longer rushing to heal wounds before they are ready, no longer stepping in to carry burdens that are not yours. And in doing so, you allow others the dignity of their own becoming. For the INTJ and INFJ empaths, this is the final turning. You are no longer the net catching everyone who falls. You are the mountain they must climb, the quiet height from which they can see their own path. You are not above them, but you are no longer beneath them, holding their weight. You stand beside them when they arrive, and together you can look out over the vastness of what lies ahead. If you have walked this far, you know that there is no going back, not because the old way is forbidden, but because it no longer fits the shape of your soul. You have outgrown the skin of constant sacrifice, the identity of the indispensable one. You are not an endless well, you are a living river, and your waters must flow where they are meant to go. And so, when you stop caring in the way the world has taught you to, something miraculous happens. You begin to live in the way your soul has always known you could. You move from the compulsion of the wounded to the freedom of the whole. You become less predictable, less available to the trivial, more attuned to the essential. Your empathy becomes not a currency spent to survive, but a gift bestowed where it will truly bear fruit. In the end, this transformation is not about withdrawing from love, but about becoming its truest vessel. For love that is chosen, rooted in sovereignty and guided by the self, is the most enduring force there is. And when such love moves through an empath who has reclaimed their power, it does not just heal, it awakens